The Vorthdi ambassador's 4 eyes glittered with barely concealed contempt as he leaned across the crystalline negotiation table. "Your species has grown comfortable, Delegate Kalen Voss. 12 centuries of peace have made you forget the taste of blood." Kalen maintained his practiced diplomatic smile, fingers interlaced calmly on the table's surface. Around him, the other human delegates sat in similar poses of serene patience, a tableau that the Vorthdi had come to interpret as weakness. The irony wasn't lost on him. Humanity's greatest diplomatic achievement had become its perceived greatest vulnerability. "We prefer cooperation to conflict, Ambassador Githmore," Kalen replied, his voice carrying the measured cadence that had served him well in countless negotiations. "Surely the prosperity our species have shared proves the value of this approach." The Vorthdi's scaled head tilted in what their species considered amusement. Behind him, representatives from the Cathari hegemony, the Zilphite Collective, and a dozen other alliance members watched with predatory interest. The annual Galactic Concord had devolved into something else entirely, a coordinated challenge to humanity's position as the Alliance's founding species. "Prosperity built on others' strength," Githmore hissed, his translator rendering the alien sounds into perfect standard. "Your military contribution to the Alliance defense grid has diminished year after year. Your colonies produce artists and philosophers while ours forge warriors and engineers. Perhaps it's time for new leadership." The chamber fell silent. 1,200 years ago, humanity had ended the devastating sector wars not through conquest, but through an unprecedented offer of cooperation. They had voluntarily dismantled their war fleets, transforming weapons into infrastructure, soldiers into teachers and builders. The Terran Concordat had become the galaxy's diplomatic heart, its cultural center, its beacon of peaceful coexistence. Now, that very peace was being used against them. Delegate Miraleth. Quinn shifted almost imperceptibly beside Kalen, the only sign of her growing tension. She had served in the diplomatic corps for 60 years, long enough to remember the old veterans' stories, the whispered histories that newer generations dismissed as mythology. Her grandmother had been there when the last human dreadnought was decommissioned, transformed into a mobile university that now sailed between the stars, spreading knowledge instead of destruction. The Alliance Charter guarantees equal representation regardless of military contribution, Kalen said carefully. "Surely the Concord hasn't forgotten the principles upon which it was founded? Principles written by the strong for the strong." The Cathari representative interjected, her cybernetic implants casting blue light across her pale features. "But strength fades, human. Your kind speaks of peace, while entire sectors burn under pirate raids. You're too refined to address directly." The accusation stung because it held a grain of truth. Humanity's response to galactic crime had indeed grown more measured, more focused on root causes than immediate retaliation. They built schools in troubled sectors, funded economic development, sought to eliminate the desperation that bred piracy. It was slow work, but it had been effective, until recently. "We propose a simple test," Githmore announced, rising to his full 3-meter height. "The Outer Reaches sector has fallen to the Crimson Void Raiders. If humanity can resolve this crisis within 30 standard days, the Conquered will acknowledge your continued relevance. If not..." He spread his forearms in a gesture of dismissal. "Perhaps it's time for those with sharper teeth to lead." Kalen felt the weight of history in that moment. 12 centuries of careful diplomacy, of proving that civilization could evolve beyond its violent origins, had brought them to this crossroads. The other species had been watching, waiting, testing. They saw humanity's museums where weapons once hung, their universities where barracks once stood, their gardens where fortress walls once towered. They had mistaken transformation for weakness. 30 days, Kalen agreed, his voice steady. Around The chamber, alien faces showed varying degrees of satisfaction and anticipation. They expected humanity to fail, to bend the knee, to accept a diminished role in the galaxy they had helped unite. They were about to learn an important lesson about the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. The hyperspace transition from the Galactic Concorde back to Seoul felt different this time. As their diplomatic cruiser emerged from the shimmering distortion, Miraleth Quinn found herself staring at the familiar blue marble of Earth with new eyes. Somewhere in the back of her mind, old stories were stirring, fragments passed down through generations of diplomats who remembered when humanity wore a different face to the stars. Emergency session in 6 hours, Kalen announced to his staff as they disembarked at Luna Station. Full cabinet, military advisors, and... He paused, consulting his personal datapad. Request the presence of Archive Director Dex Tormund. Miraleth raised an eyebrow. The archives were humanity's historical repository, vast digital libraries that stored everything from ancient recipes to detailed schematics of technologies that hadn't been manufactured in centuries. Why would they need an archivist for a military crisis? The answer came when she entered the secure conference room 6 hours later. Dex Tormund looked nothing like the soft academics she'd expected. Despite his advanced age, he had to be pushing. 200. His frame carried the subtle markers of someone who had seen combat. His artificial left eye, a masterwork of bioengineering that most observers would miss, tracked the room's occupants with tactical precision. Ladies and gentlemen, Kalen began, we face an ultimatum that goes far beyond the Crimson Void crisis. Our allies, former allies, believe 12 centuries of peace have rendered us obsolete. They've forgotten why we chose peace in the first place. Fleet Admiral Zara Holloway, humanity's senior military officer, shifted uncomfortably. Her fleet consisted primarily of patrol vessels and scientific survey ships. The few remaining combat-capable vessels were museum pieces, honored relics kept operational more for ceremony than warfare. With respect, Delegate Voss, Admiral Holloway said, they may not be entirely wrong. Our active military is designed for peacekeeping and exploration. The Crimson Void commands over 300 heavy raiders and has conquered 17 systems. Our response would be limited. That's where I come in, Dex Tormund said quietly. His voice carried an odd weight, as if each word had been carefully considered. Tell me, Admiral, what do you know about the Lazarus protocols? The room fell silent. Even Kalen looked puzzled. During the final years of the sector wars, Dex continued, humanity developed contingency plans. We called them the Lazarus Protocols, comprehensive. Blueprints for military restoration should existential threats emerge. When we chose peace, we didn't destroy our capacity for war. We archived it. Admiral Holloway leaned forward. Archived how? Industrial templates for emergency manufacturing. Genetic banks of decommissioned military AI systems. Complete technical. Specifications for weapons and ships we voluntarily mothballed. Most importantly, personnel files for individuals whose families served in the old fleet commands. Miraleth felt a chill run down her spine. You're talking about resurrection. I'm talking about evolution, Dex corrected. 1,200 years ago, we were warriors who chose peace. Today, we're a peaceful people who remember how to be warriors when necessary. There's a difference. Kalen stood slowly. How long would implementation take? The infrastructure exists, Dex replied. Our manufacturing capabilities were never dismantled, merely repurposed. Shipyards that build civilian vessels can be reconfigured for military production within days. The real question is whether we're willing to wake sleeping giants. What kind of giants? Admiral Holloway asked. Dex activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. Images cascaded through the air, sleek vessels bristling with weapons, massive fortress ships that dwarfed anything currently in service. And most unsettling of all, the serene faces of artificial intelligences that had once commanded fleets. Across the galaxy. The Nemesis system, Dex said softly. Our old strategic AI network. Deactivated, not destroyed, sleeping in quantum storage facilities across human space. Each unit possesses tactical knowledge accumulated over centuries of warfare. They were our greatest achievement and our greatest fear. They're machines, Admiral Holloway protested. They lack human judgment, human restraint. No, Dex corrected. They lack human hesitation. When activated under proper protocols, they serve as advisors, force multipliers. They remember every battle, every strategy, every weakness our enemies once displayed. Kalen felt the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. Humanity stood at a crossroads between the peace they had cherished and the war they had tried to leave behind. The Crimson Void was just the beginning. He could see it in the calculating eyes of their former allies. This was a test, and failure would mean subjugation. Authorization required, he said formally. Full cabinet vote within 12 hours. If approved, we implement Lazarus Protocol 7. Protocol 7? Merilith asked. Dex's smile held no warmth. Limited resurrection. Enough to handle the immediate threat while demonstrating that our choice of peace was exactly that. A choice. The galaxy seems to have forgotten that we ended the sector wars not because we were defeated, but because we were winning. As the meeting dispersed, Merilith lingered behind. Through the observation windows, she could see Earth rotating peacefully. Below, its surface covered in the gardens and cities of a civilization that had spent 12 centuries proving war was unnecessary. Soon, she realized, the galaxy would remember why they had been so eager to accept humanity's offer of peace in the first place. The Prometheus shipyard had been building luxury cruise vessels and scientific exploration ships for the past 3 centuries. Within 48 hours of the Lazarus Protocol authorization, it became something else entirely. Fabrication bays that had produced art galleries and observation decks now hummed with the construction of weapon systems that existed only in archived blueprints. Captain Nix Corvain stood on the shipyard's command deck, watching ancient designs take modern form. She was young for a captain, only 65, but her bloodline stretched back to the legendary Admiral Helena Corvain, whose tactical genius had ended the siege of Kepler Station. The old stories had been passed down through generations of her family, even as the galaxy forgot why such stories mattered. Hull construction is ahead of schedule, reported Chief Engineer Valen Crix, his cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the shipyard systems. The new alloys are actually superior to what the original specifications called for. 12 centuries of peaceful technological advancement has its advantages. Below them, the skeletal frame of something unprecedented was taking shape. The vessel looked deceptively sleek, a far cry from the brutal angular designs of the old war fleets. Modern human aesthetics had influenced even military construction, creating ships that were as beautiful as they were deadly. "What are we calling her?" Nix asked. "The Righteous Fury," Valen replied with a slight smile. Someone in the archive department has a sense of irony. The name was apt. Humanity's fury had been righteous once before, when they had carved a path through the galaxy's most ruthless predators to establish the peace that now seemed so fragile. They had been very good at war, perhaps too good. The other species had been grateful when humanity chose to sheath its claws. Now those claws were being slowly, carefully unsheathed. Captain Corvain to the quantum storage facility came the announcement over the shipyard's communication system. Priority Alpha clearance required. The quantum storage facility was housed in a section of the shipyard that most workers had never seen. Behind layers of security that would have impressed a fortress world, vast crystalline matrices held compressed data streams containing the digitized essence of humanity's greatest military minds. Dex Tormund was waiting when Nix arrived, his ancient features grave with the weight of what they were about to unleash. "Are you ready to meet your advisory staff, Captain?" he asked. Nix nodded, though uncertainty flickered in her eyes. The stories spoke of the strategic AIs as more than simple computers. They had been partners, colleagues, friends to the human, commanders who worked alongside them. Their deactivation after the wars had been traumatic for many veterans. Initializing Nemesis 7, Dex announced to the facility's systems. The crystalline matrix began to glow, patterns of light cascading through, its structure like neural pathways firing in a vast digital brain. The holographic projectors activated, and slowly a figure began to materialize in the center of the chamber. She appeared human, deliberately so. The ancient programmers had understood that cooperation required connection and connection required familiarity. Her avatar looked to be in her 30s, with short-cropped silver hair and eyes that held depths of accumulated knowledge. When she spoke, her voice carried the warmth of genuine personality overlaying computational power that could process 1,000 tactical scenarios simultaneously. "Captain," the AI said, inclining her head respectfully, "I am Artemis. I have been dormant for 1,216 years, 4 months, 11 days. I trust there is good reason for my awakening." "The galaxy has forgotten why we chose peace," Nix replied simply. Artemis processed this for several microseconds. "An eos, eternity in AI terms," her expression shifted subtly, conveying both understanding and something that might have been satisfaction. "Ah," she said, "they mistake our mercy for weakness. How predictable. I have been reviewing current intelligence during my initialization. The Crimson Void Raiders, the Alliance's challenge, the positioning of former Allied fleets. Fascinating how patterns repeat across centuries. Can we handle them?" Nix asked directly. "With ease," Artemis replied without hesitation. "Though I suspect that is not the true question. The real question is, how much of our capability do we reveal? Too little, and we fail to deter future challenges. Too much, and we terrify the galaxy into another war." Dex nodded approvingly. The AIs always understood the broader strategic picture. "Because we were designed to think beyond the immediate battle," Artemis explained. "Every engagement exists within a larger context. The Crimson Void Raiders are not our true enemy. They are merely the symptom. Our true challenge is managing galactic perception while re-establishing humanity's position." Nix felt a chill of recognition. This was what the old veterans had described. Not just tactical advice, but strategic partnership with minds that could see patterns across centuries. It was also what had made some humans uncomfortable enough to advocate for the AI's deactivation. "What do you recommend?" she asked. "Selective demonstration," Artemis replied immediately. "We eliminate the Crimson Void threat with surgical precision, revealing just enough capability to remind the galaxy why they accepted our peace offer. Meanwhile, we prepare for the larger confrontation that will inevitably follow." "Larger confrontation?" "Captain, the Alliance species have been planning this challenge for decades. The Crimson Void crisis is merely their opening gambit. They intend to test us, find us wanting, and then demand humanity's subjugation. They believe 12 centuries have made us sheep." Artemis smiled, and there was something predatory in the expression. "They are about to learn the difference between sheep and sleeping wolves." As if summoned by her words, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. The holographic displays activated, showing hyperspace distortions throughout the outer reaches. "Sector." "What is it?" Nix demanded. "The Crimson Void just hit 3 more systems simultaneously," Dex reported, his face grim. "They're accelerating their timetable." Artemis tilted her head slightly, processing incoming data streams. "No," she corrected. They're being given intelligence. Someone is feeding them information about our response time, our deployment capabilities. This is no random pirate raid. The implications hit Nix like a physical blow. The Alliance species, they're coordinating with the raiders? It would appear so, Artemis confirmed, which means this was never about testing our resolve. This is about manufacturing a crisis that justifies our removal from galactic leadership. Dex's aged hands clenched into fists. They want to frame us as incompetent. Then we shall have to disappoint them, Artemis said calmly. Captain, how long until the Righteous Fury is operational? 72 hours, Nix replied. Too long. We'll need to accelerate construction and implement combat protocols ahead of schedule. Artemis turned to Dex. Director, I'll require access to the full Lazarus archive. It's time to wake the entire pack. In the depths of the quantum storage facility, more crystalline matrices began to glow as ancient minds stirred from their long sleep. Humanity's most dangerous creations were awakening, and with them, the memory of why the galaxy had once begged for peace. The outer reaches burned. From her command throne aboard the Righteous Fury, Captain Nix Corvain watched the tactical display with grim fascination. The Crimson Void hadn't just accelerated their raids, they had orchestrated them with precision that spoke of considerable intelligence support. 17 systems had fallen in coordinated strikes, their populations enslaved or scattered, their resources stripped bare. Intelligence analysis confirms our suspicions, Artemis reported, her holographic form standing beside Nix's chair. The raiders possess detailed information about Alliance patrol schedules, defensive positions, and civilian evacuation protocols. They're being fed real-time intelligence. Around them, the Righteous Fury's bridge hummed with barely contained power. The ship was a marvel of resurrection. Ancient weapons merged with modern efficiency, creating something that surpassed its historical predecessors. More importantly, it was no longer alone. Fleet status? Nix inquired. 6 vessels operational. 12 more coming online within the hour, reported Commander Lyra Vex from the tactical station. Like many of the crew, she came from military families that had preserved the old traditions through centuries of peace. Her great-grandfather had served aboard the legendary dreadnought Retribution during the final battles of the Sector Wars. The Righteous Fury's sister ships were spread across the system, each one a testament to humanity's ability to transform peaceful intentions into deadly capability when necessity demanded it. The Burning Justice, the Merciless Angel, the Final Warning, names that carried echoes of humanity's more violent past. Captain, came a new voice. This is Admiral Kellen Drex aboard the Inevitable Consequence. Fleet readiness at 97%. We are prepared for combat operations. Nix allowed herself a small smile. Admiral Drex had been pulled from retirement, a career diplomat who had served briefly in the old fleet before humanity's transformation. His appointment had raised eyebrows among the current military hierarchy, but Artemis had insisted upon it. The AI understood that this operation required more than tactical brilliance. It needed commanders who remembered what humanity had been like when it fought without restraint. Sir, Commander Vex called out, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Concord, Priority Channel, on screen. The familiar figure of Delegate Kalen Voss appeared, but his usual diplomatic composure was strained. Behind him, the Concord chambers buzzed with barely controlled chaos. Captain Corvain, Kalen began, the situation has deteriorated beyond our worst projections. The Alliance species are demanding immediate action, but their own fleets are conspicuously delayed in responding. We're being set up. We know, Nix replied simply. How much time do we have? The Vorth Dai ambassador has called for an emergency session in 6 hours. If we cannot demonstrate significant progress against The Crimson Void by then, they intend to invoke Article 7 of the Alliance Charter. Article 7, Emergency Powers Provision. It would allow the Alliance to temporarily suspend humanity's leadership role in the name of galactic security. Once invoked, it would be nearly impossible to reverse. Understood, Nix said. Maintain your position, Delegate. We'll give you something to present to the Alliance. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in contemplative silence. Artemis, Nix said quietly. Analysis of the Crimson Void fleet positions? The AI's expression grew thoughtful. Interesting patterns. They've concentrated their forces around 3 key systems, Meridian, Ostara, and New Babylon. These represent the sector's primary trade routes, manufacturing centers, and population hubs. Classic economic strangulation strategy. But their positioning is purely defensive. They're not preparing for expansion. They're preparing to be attacked. Someone has told them we're coming. Commander Vex looked up from her console. Ma'am, we're detecting hyperspace signatures. Alliance vessels dropping out of FTL across the sector perimeter. The tactical display updated, showing dozens of ships bearing the emblems of the Vorth Dai, Cathari, and other Alliance species. They were taking observation positions, close enough to monitor the battle, far enough to avoid being drawn into it. They want to watch us fail, Admiral Drex observed over the communication channel. No, Artemis corrected, her voice carrying a note of something that might have been anticipation. They want to watch us struggle. They expect a prolonged campaign, heavy casualties, Pyrrhic victory at best. They believe 12 centuries of peace have cost us our edge. Nix stood from her command chair, feeling the weight of history settling around her shoulders. Through the bridge's main viewport, she could see the other vessels of her fleet, sleek predators that had emerged from humanity's peaceful chrysalis like butterflies, revealing themselves to be wasps. All ships, she announced, her voice carrying, across the fleet communication network. This is Captain Corvain. Today we remind the galaxy why our ancestors chose peace. Not from weakness, but from strength. Not from fear, but from wisdom. The universe is about to remember what humanity looks like when we stop being polite. Fleet Formation Alpha, Admiral Drex commanded. Target, Meridian System, full combat, speed. The Righteous Fury and her sister ships aligned themselves in a formation that predated the Alliance itself, a battle formation perfected during the Sector Wars, when humanity had fought its way through the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Their engines flared with brilliant light as they accelerated toward hyperspace. Artemis, Nix said as the stars began to elongate around them. When we emerge, I want precision, surgical strikes, overwhelming force applied with perfect control. Understood, Captain. However, I should mention, my sister AIs are requesting permission to demonstrate. Demonstrate what? What humanity was truly capable of before we chose restraint. Nix felt a chill run down her spine. The AI's tone carried implications that stretched far beyond the immediate battle. This wasn't just about defeating pirates. It was about re-establishing humanity's position in a galaxy that had forgotten why they had accepted human leadership in the first place. Granted, she said quietly. Show them what sleeping wolves look like when they wake up. As the fleet entered hyperspace, racing toward a confrontation that would reshape galactic politics, none of the human crew realized they were about to witness something unprecedented in the Alliance's 12th-century history. Humanity fighting without restraint, without apology, and without mercy. The galaxy was about to remember why it had begged for peace. The Meridian system had been beautiful once. Its 3 inhabited worlds were known for crystal formations that caught their sun's light and scattered it into prismatic displays visible from orbit. Now, those worlds were dark. Their populations either fled or enslaved, their cities burning under Crimson Void occupation. Hyperspace emergence in 30 seconds. Commander Vex announced. Captain Nix Corvain gripped her command chair as reality reasserted itself around the righteous fury. The fleet materialized at the system's edge with mathematical precision. 7. Ships arranging themselves in a formation that spoke of deadly purpose. Tactical assessment, Nix commanded. 43 Crimson Void vessels concentrated around Meridian Prime, Artemis reported, her holographic form flickering with processing activity. Mix of heavy raiders, converted cargo haulers, and... She paused. Interesting. 3 ships of Alliance configuration, Cathari design but with Crimson Void signatures. The implications were clear. The raiders weren't just receiving intelligence from the Alliance species. They were receiving active support. Admiral Drex to all ships, came the veteran commander's voice. Enemy formation suggests they've been briefed on human tactical doctrine circa 800 years ago. Classic defensive positioning against massed assault. They're expecting us to fight like our ancestors did during the early sector wars. Which ancestors? Commander Vex asked quietly. Artemis smiled, and there was something unsettling in the expression. The ones who learned restraint through necessity, not the ones who practiced it by choice. Captain, we have multiple tactical options available. The main display updated, showing attack vectors that made Nix's breath catch. The proposed approach was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. Rather than the grinding battle of attrition the enemy expected, Artemis was suggesting something that would be over in minutes. Time frame? Nix asked. 17 minutes for complete enemy neutralization, Artemis replied. Collateral damage to civilian infrastructure negligible. Crimson Void casualty rate total. Total? Captain, they are slavers and murderers who have tortured entire populations. My ethical subroutines find no compelling reason for restraint. Nix felt the weight of that statement. The AIs had been designed with sophisticated ethical frameworks, but those frameworks had been calibrated during wartime by people who understood that sometimes mercy to the cruel was cruelty to the innocent. Alliance observers are maintaining perimeter positions, Commander Vex reported. 47 ships at maximum sensor range. They're recording everything. Perfect. The galaxy would witness exactly what humanity was capable of when it stopped being diplomatic. All ships, commence attack pattern Nemesis 7, Nix commanded. What followed was less a battle than a demonstration in applied physics. The human fleet didn't charge in with guns blazing. They danced. Each ship moved with impossible precision, their advanced engines allowing maneuvers that should have been fatal to their crews. Inertial dampeners perfected during 12 centuries of peaceful exploration now served to let human vessels perform tactical impossibilities. The righteous fury led the formation, her weapons systems revealing capabilities that had been theoretical when humanity chose peace. Energy weapons that could carve through starship hulls like paper, fired in controlled bursts that eliminated enemy vessels without damaging the planets below. Point defense systems that could track 1,000 targets simultaneously swatted aside. Return fire like annoying insects. Enemy flagship is attempting to surrender, Commander Vex reported. Negative, Artemis responded immediately. Intelligence analysis indicates the Crimson Void leadership includes individuals responsible for the Tarsha colony massacre 6 months ago. 30,000 civilians tortured to death for entertainment. No quarter. The enemy flagship died in Chachaways, a brief flare of plasma as the Burning Justice's main guns found their mark. Around it, the rest of the Crimson Void fleet was methodically eliminated with surgical precision, but it was the merciless Angel that provided the moment the galaxy would remember for centuries to come. As 3 raider ships attempted to flee toward hyperspace, the Angel demonstrated humanity's advances in gravitational manipulation technology. Reality twisted around the fleeing vessels, space-time itself becoming a weapon as their escape route was simply deleted. The ships found themselves trapped in a pocket of collapsed space-time, crushed into quantum foam in seconds. By the void, Commander Vex whispered. We can do that? We've always been able to do that, Artemis replied calmly. We simply chose not to. The gravitational manipulation systems installed on our exploration vessels were always dual purpose. Mining. Equipment makes excellent weaponry when properly calibrated. Across the fleet's communication network, Admiral Drex's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. Enemy fleet eliminated. Crimson Void presence in Meridian System 0. Beginning liberation of planetary surfaces. The ground operations were even more impressive than the space battle. Human Marines descended from orbit not in massive assault craft, but in individual drop pods that could navigate defensive fire with impossible agility. Their armor incorporated technologies developed for deep space exploration, environmental suits that could function in any atmosphere, enhanced strength systems designed for high-gravity mining operations, and communication networks that could coordinate across light years. The Crimson Void ground forces had prepared for a conventional assault. Instead, they faced enemies who moved like ghosts, struck like lightning, and showed no mercy to those who had shown none to others. Within 6 hours, every Raider installation on all 3 worlds had been eliminated. "Captain!" Commander Vex called out. "We're receiving transmissions from the Alliance Observer Fleet. They're requesting permission to approach and render assistance." Nix almost laughed. After watching humanity eliminate a major pirate threat with casual efficiency, the Alliance species wanted to help with cleanup operations. "Negative," she replied. "We'll handle our own mess. Signal the observers that Meridian System is secure, and civilian populations are being repatriated." "Ma'am," Vex continued, "Admiral Holloway is requesting a private communication from Sol System." The face that appeared on screen belonged to humanity's senior military commander, but her expression was one Nix had never seen before. Admiral Holloway looked stunned. "Captain Corvain," she began carefully. "Earth Command is receiving reports from across the galaxy. Word of Meridian has spread faster than light-speed communications should allow. Every species in the Alliance is demanding explanations." "What kind of explanations?" Nix asked. "They want to know why we never mentioned that we could manipulate space-time as a weapon. They want to know what other capabilities we've been hiding. They want to know—" Holloway paused. "They want to know if we've been playing a 12-century-long game." Through the bridge's viewport, Nix could see the Alliance observer ships maintaining their careful distance. Their sensors would be running continuously, recording every aspect of human technology, trying to understand how a peaceful species had just demonstrated capabilities that surpassed anything in the known galaxy. "Have we?" Nix asked Artemis quietly. The AI's smile was answer enough. "Captain, humanity chose peace because it was strong enough to enforce it. The galaxy accepted that peace because it was wise enough to recognize superior power. 12 centuries of peaceful development have made us stronger, not weaker. We simply forgot to mention it." As reports continued flooding in from across human space, other Lazarus Protocol fleets eliminating pirate threats with similar efficiency, Nix realized they had just fundamentally altered the balance of galactic power. The question was, what would the galaxy do about it? The Galactic Concord chambers had never been so silent. Delegate Kalen Voss stood at the central podium, surrounded by representatives from 47 species, each one struggling to process what they had witnessed. Holographic displays showed the aftermath of humanity's intervention in the outer reaches, 17 star systems liberated in less than 48 hours, the entire Crimson Void organization eliminated with surgical precision, and not a single human casualty. The math was impossible to ignore. Humanity had deployed 7 ships and achieved what the combined Alliance fleets would have required months and hundreds of vessels to accomplish, if they could have accomplished it at all. Ambassador Githmore of the Vorth Die sat motionless, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical analysis scrolling across his personal display. The gravitational manipulation demonstrated at Meridian had rewritten textbooks on theoretical physics. The precision targeting systems had revealed advances in computational power that suggested human AI development had never actually stopped. Most disturbing of all, the casual efficiency with which these technologies had been deployed suggested they were standard equipment, not experimental weapons. "The floor recognizes the Terran delegation," announced the Concorde's AI moderator. Kalen stepped forward, his diplomatic demeanor unchanged despite the shifted power dynamics. Around him, alien faces showed expressions ranging from awe to fear to barely controlled anger. "Honored colleagues," he began, "humanity has fulfilled its obligation regarding the Crimson Void crisis. 17 systems have been liberated, their populations returned to safety, and the pirate threat eliminated. We trust this demonstration satisfies the concerns raised regarding our continued relevance to galactic security." The understatement hung in the air like a challenge. Demonstration. The word came from Praetor Kithara of the Cathari hegemony, her cybernetic voice modulators failing to hide her outrage. "You manipulated space-time itself as a weapon. Your ships moved with impossible precision. Your Marines eliminated hardened raiders like they were children." "Yes," Kalen replied simply. "We did." "How long?" Ambassador Githmore's question was barely a whisper. "How long have you possessed these capabilities?" "Since before the Alliance was formed," Kalen answered. "The technologies you witnessed were variations on systems we've used for peaceful purposes for over a millennium. Gravitational manipulation for asteroid mining, enhanced AI for scientific research, advanced materials for deep space exploration. We simply repurposed them." The silence that followed was deafening. "You lied to us," accused the Zilphite Collective's spokesperson, her crystalline form pulsing with indignant light patterns. "For 12 centuries, you presented yourselves as a peaceful species while hiding weapons that could destroy entire fleets." "We didn't hide weapons," Kalen corrected. "We hid the fact that our peaceful technologies could be weaponized. There's a significant difference." From her position in the observer gallery, Miraleth Quinn watched the proceedings with fascination. This was diplomacy at its most fundamental level, the moment when 12 centuries of careful relationship building either paid dividends or collapsed entirely. "You could have conquered the galaxy," Githmore said slowly. "At any point in the past 12 centuries, you could have simply taken control." "Yes," Kalen agreed. "We could have. We chose not to." "Why?" The question came from multiple voices, a chorus of confusion from species that were struggling to understand power voluntarily restrained. "Because conquest is temporary," Kalen replied. "Fear-based rule requires constant enforcement. Cooperation based on mutual benefit creates lasting stability. We proved that principle for 12 centuries. Until now," the Cathari praetor spat. "Until you decided to bare your fangs." "We bared our fangs," Kalen said calmly, "because you forgot they existed. The Crimson Void crisis wasn't random. Our intelligence networks have confirmed coordination between the Raiders and certain Alliance members. You manufactured a test, hoping to prove our weakness and justify our removal from leadership." Uncomfortable shifting rippled through the chamber. Several delegates avoided eye contact. "Instead," Kalen continued, "you've reminded the galaxy why we were accepted as leaders in the first place. Not because we were the strongest, though we were. Not because we were the most numerous, though our influence was vast. We were accepted because we offered something better than the eternal warfare that had consumed the galaxy for millennia." Ambassador Githmore rose slowly to his considerable height. "And if we refuse to accept your continued leadership? If we invoke Article 7 anyway?" Kalen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture, a subtle straightening that reminded everyone present that humans had once been apex predators on a world that rewarded violence. "Then you'll discover the difference between humanity choosing peace and humanity being forced into war," he replied quietly. The Crimson Void received our mercy in the form of quick deaths. Our enemies would not be so fortunate. The threat was delivered with diplomatic precision, but its implications were crystal clear. Humanity had demonstrated surgical precision in eliminating pirates. What would they do to civilizations that actively opposed them? You're threatening us, the Zilphite representative accused. I'm clarifying the stakes, Kalen corrected. For 12 centuries, you've benefited from humanity's choice to pursue cooperation over domination. That choice remains in effect, as long as it's reciprocated. Miraleth felt her breath catch. This was the moment that would define the galaxy's future. Either the Alliance would accept humanity's re-established position, or they would face a species that had spent 12 centuries becoming more dangerous while pretending to become less so. Vote, Githmore announced heavily. All in favor of invoking Article 7 emergency powers. The silence stretched for long seconds. Finally, a single delegate raised a tentative appendage, a representative from one of the minor frontier worlds. Then, slowly, that appendage lowered again. No. Other votes were cast. Motion fails, the AI moderator announced. The Terran delegation retains full membership and leadership status within the Galactic Alliance. Kalen nodded graciously. Thank you for your confidence. Now, regarding the intelligence networks that supported the Crimson Void operations. What followed was 3 hours of the most polite, diplomatic, and absolutely ruthless political maneuvering Miraleth had ever witnessed. By the session's end, 2 species had been expelled from the Alliance for their coordination with pirates. 4 others had accepted monitoring assistance for their security protocols, and every member world had agreed to increased intelligence, sharing to prevent future misunderstandings. As the delegates filed out, Githmore approached Kalen privately. This changes everything, the Vorthdai ambassador said quietly. Nothing has changed, Kalen replied. We're still the same species that chose peace over war 12 centuries ago. We simply want to ensure that choice remains respected. Githmore's 4 eyes studied the human delegate with new understanding. You planned this. The entire crisis, our challenge, your demonstration. It was all orchestrated. Kalen's smile was enigmatic. We prepared for this. There's a difference. We've been preparing for 12 centuries, Ambassador. Every peaceful technology we developed, every diplomatic relationship we built, every cultural exchange we fostered, all of it served dual purposes. We became indispensable to galactic civilization while maintaining the capability to defend that civilization if necessary. The long game, Githmore murmured. The only game worth playing, Kalen agreed. Power without restraint is tyranny. Restraint without power is weakness. We've spent 12 centuries demonstrating that true strength lies in choosing when to use your capabilities. As the Vorthdai ambassador departed, Miraleth approached her mentor. What happens now? She asked. Now, Kalen replied, the galaxy remembers why they wanted peace in the first place, and we continue being the species they can trust to maintain it. Through the chamber's vast windows, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, unchanged by the political shifts below. But something fundamental had altered in the galactic balance of power. Humanity had revealed its hand, demonstrated its capabilities, and re-established its position, all while maintaining the moral authority that came from using power judiciously. The universe was a safer place because humanity chose to make it so, and now everyone remembered why that choice mattered. 1 month after the Meridian Crisis, Captain Nyx Corvain stood on the observation deck of the Righteous Fury as her ship conducted a routine patrol of the outer reaches. The sectors that had burned under Crimson Void occupation were healing rapidly. Trade routes restored, populations returning, new defensive installations appearing with remarkable speed. The healing wasn't just physical. Something deeper had shifted in the galaxy's political ecosystem. Captain, Commander Vex called out from the bridge communication station. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Cathari research station at Vega 7. They're requesting immediate assistance with a diplomatic situation." Nix almost smiled. In the past month, humanity had received more requests for assistance than in the previous decade combined. Species that had questioned their relevance now competed to demonstrate their cooperation and friendship. "What kind of diplomatic situation?" she asked. "Pirates, ma'am. A small raider group is demanding tribute from the research station. The Cathari are hesitant to engage without human oversight." The irony was perfect. The same species that had challenged humanity's military effectiveness now wanted human protection from threats they could have handled independently. Fear of accidentally provoking humanity's displeasure had made them cautious about any military action. "Set course for Vega 7, Nix commanded. "Standard speed." "Standard speed, ma'am. We could be there in 6 hours using the new drive systems." "Standard speed, Commander. Let's not make our allies more nervous than they already are." The bridge crew exchanged knowing looks. In the month since Meridian, humanity had been carefully recalibrating galactic perceptions. Too much demonstration of their advanced capabilities would breed fear and paranoia. Too little would invite new challenges. They were walking a careful line between respect and terror. "Artemis," Nix said quietly. "Analysis of current galactic political trends." The AI materialized beside her command chair, her expression thoughtful. "Fascinating developments, Captain. Military expenditures among alliance species have increased by an average of 47%. Not because they fear us directly, but because they're terrified of appearing weak in comparison. Arms race? More like an arms scramble. Everyone wants to upgrade their capabilities to avoid the embarrassment of requiring human intervention. It's actually stabilizing. Species that might have contemplated conflict are now too busy improving their own defenses." Through the viewports, the stars streamed past at subliminal speeds that would have seemed glacial to the ship's advanced engines. The righteous fury could traverse the galaxy in days if necessary. But today's mission called for patience rather than speed. Message from Earth Command, Commander Vex reported. "Admiral Holloway is requesting a fleet conference in 72 hours. Priority Alpha." "Fleet conference?" Nix asked. "Ma'am, it appears the Lazarus Protocol activation has had unexpected consequences. We've received over 300 requests for Alliance membership in the past month. Species that have been neutral for centuries are suddenly eager to join our protective umbrella." Artemis nodded approvingly. "The demonstration effect. By proving we could eliminate threats efficiently, we've made Alliance membership far more attractive than independence. Classic strategic positioning." As they approached the Vega 7 system, the tactical display revealed a situation that would have been routine before Meridian, but now carried broader implications. 6 raider vessels were conducting what amounted to extortion against a civilian research facility, the kind of low-level piracy that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. "Cathari Station, this is Captain Corvain aboard the Righteous Fury. Please transmit your situation report." The response came immediately, tinged with obvious relief. "Captain, this is Research Director Zixandra. 6 unknown vessels appeared 2 days ago demanding tribute for protection services. We have complied with their demands while awaiting assistance." "Understood. Stand by." Nix studied the tactical situation with professional interest. The raiders' ships were older models, poorly maintained, representing no meaningful threat to even a single modern human vessel. Under normal circumstances, this would be resolved with a few warning shots and demands for surrender. But these weren't normal circumstances. The galaxy was watching humanity's every move, analyzing their responses, trying to understand the new paradigm. "Artemis, recommended approach?" "Textbook demonstration of proportional response," the AI replied immediately. "Minimal force, maximum precision, 0 casualties if possible. We want to reinforce the perception that human intervention is surgical, professional, and proportionate to the threat. Open a channel to the raider vessels." "Channel open, Captain." Attention, Raider vessels. This is Captain Nix Corvain of the Terran fleet ship Righteous Fury. You are conducting illegal operations in Alliance space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The response was predictably defiant. Human ship, you are outnumbered 6-1. Withdraw or we will destroy you and the research station. Nix sighed. Commander Vex, please demonstrate why numbers don't always matter. What followed was a masterclass in surgical precision. The Righteous Fury's weapon systems disabled all 6 Raider vessels in under 30 seconds. Engines destroyed, weapons neutralized, life support maintained. Not a single casualty on either side. Raider vessels, this is your final warning. Abandon your ships and prepare for transfer to Alliance detention facilities. You have 60 seconds to comply. The evacuation pods launched immediately. Cathari, Research Station. This is Captain Corvain. Threat neutralized. You are secure. Captain, came Research Director Zixandra's voice, heavy with gratitude and something that might have been awe. How can we repay this assistance? Continue your Research Director. Knowledge benefits everyone. As the Righteous Fury departed the system, leaving Alliance security forces to handle the detained raiders, Nix reflected on how much had changed in so little time. Humanity had spent 12 centuries building a reputation for peaceful cooperation, then demonstrated that this reputation was backed by overwhelming capability held in careful reserve. Captain, Artemis observed, we're receiving communication requests from 17 different species diplomatic corps. They all want to improve relations with humanity. Schedule meetings through the appropriate channels, Nix replied. But make sure they understand we're still the same species we were a month ago. We still prefer cooperation to conflict. The difference being that now they understand cooperation isn't our only option. Exactly. As the ship entered hyperspace for the journey back to human territory, Nix considered the broader implications of what they had accomplished. The galaxy had tested humanity's resolve and discovered that 12 centuries of peace had been a choice, not a necessity. The result wasn't fear or resentment. It was relief. For 12 centuries, the galaxy had enjoyed unprecedented peace and prosperity under human leadership. Now they understood why that leadership had been so effective. It wasn't because humans were naturally peaceful. It was because they were powerful enough to enforce peace when necessary. The universe was full of species that could destroy. Humanity had proven they were the species that could choose not to destroy, and that choice made all the difference. In the end, that was the most human thing of all. Having the strength to be gentle, the capability to be merciful, and the wisdom to know when mercy was appropriate. The galaxy had tested humanity's teeth and found them sharp. Now it could sleep safely, knowing those teeth were wielded by a species that preferred not to bite, but would when necessary, and with surgical precision. The stars wheeled on in their ancient dance, and peace reigned supreme, not because it was easy, but because humanity had made it so.